and is he going to release them publicly?
It's actually a very good question. I have not inquired with the president directly about his own taxes, but I'm happy to do so, and we'll get you an answer on that.
Secretary Bessent,
I have filed my taxes.
The president has publicly said that you are the reason that he has not fired Chairman Jay Powell. Will you make that case again to him, as he's recently said that he still wants to fire the chairman?
Look, I am confident that the process that we have laid out in terms of Kevin Warsh becoming the next Fed chair, he's going to have the hearing on the 21st of this month. He's a great candidate. We know that the Republicans on the Senate Banking Committee are aligned in that, and I am very optimistic that Kevin Warsh will be the chair of the Fed on time, and that will be a moot question.
Stephen, go ahead.
Secretary Bessent, you mentioned that the no tax on overtime is the biggest one that people are claiming. I think you said 25 million people. Have you seen evidence that more companies are offering overtime, or that people are working more overtime and increasing their productivity? And the second question, the health insurance industry is advertising heavily in D.C., describing themselves as the good guys in the whole healthcare system. President Trump has threatened to haul in their executives and force them to lower prices. Can you provide any update on the administration's efforts there?
Okay, so I'll take the second one last because that's not my area. I don't wear a lot of hats here, but I am sure that the president makes his views known with corporate executives, and if that is true, then they will be hauled before him. And with overtime, as Kelly and I go out and talk to employers and workers around the country, they all want more overtime. And there was this narrative that I think over 2 million illegal aliens have either voluntarily deported or been deported, and that there would be a worker shortage. Well, what better way to fill that gap than with overtime for hard-working Americans and for them to keep more of it? I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I'll just add that a great example are the factories that we see coming back thanks to 100% Made in America expensing. Coosa Steel is a great example in Rome, Georgia, where the owner was down to running one shift 1 day a week. He's up to 2 or 3 shifts 5 or 6 days a week. So thanks to reindustrializing this nation through our small manufacturing base, which most manufacturers in America meet the small business definition, 98% of them, we're seeing more shifts taking place, more opportunities for overtime, and then more willingness of workers to take on overtime shifts, because in the past they were penalized by the tax system for taking on overtime.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you. This is for Administrator Loeffler. You talked about how the One Big Beautiful Bill benefits small businesses. With small business optimism falling in March, is the administration planning on providing any additional tax relief or other resources to small businesses that have been affected by high fuel prices during their run operation?
Yeah, so one data point does not a trend make, and the long-term trend under President Trump has been for small business optimism to be above its 52-year average. Under Joe Biden, small business optimism fell below that average for 34 consecutive months because small business was being crushed by regulation, massive red tape, the threat of high taxes, and all the burdens of the Green New Deal. So right now, small businesses are really in growth mode. They're planning to hire, and the optimism is very strong. If you see in the NAM survey, National Association of Manufacturers came out, their optimism is up 5 points. So I think this is temporary, and we'll get back on trend.
What's the status of extending the Iran ceasefire, Karoline?
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We've remained very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks. You heard from the Vice President directly and the President this week that these conversations are productive and ongoing, and that's where we are right now. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. But we feel good about the prospects of a deal. The President mentioned that in his interview yesterday, and it's obviously in the best interest of Iran to meet the President's demands. I think he's made his red lines in these negotiations very clear to the other side, and so we are continuing to see how these conversations go.
Would those talks be in Islamabad, or where would they be the next round?
They would very likely be in the same place as they were last time, yes. With the same, I would just want to make one point that's important to the president. The Pakistanis have been incredible mediators throughout this process, and we really appreciate their friendship and their efforts to bring this deal to a close. So they are the only mediator in this negotiation. While there have been many countries around the world who want to offer their help, the president feels it's important to continue to streamline this communication through the Pakistanis, and so that's what continues to take place. Will.
Thank you, Caroline. How much room do you see for additional sanctions being placed on Iran? And do you feel like the United States is getting enough support from allies on that front? There was a letter that went to Oman and some other allies that suggested maybe the sanctions weren't, this could be for Secretary Bessent as well, but the sanctions basically weren't having the effect that the United States wanted.
I'll let the Treasury Secretary, who's in charge of sanctions, answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's not a correct characterization. Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC. One of what may prove to be fatal mistakes that the Iranians made was bombing their GCC neighbors, and who are now willing to be much more transparent in terms of the funds or do a deeper dive in investigating the funds that are held within their banking systems. So we have pushed out to them the request that we want to freeze more funds of the leadership of the IRGC and any members of Iranian leadership. The other thing that we have done is we have told countries that if you are buying Iranian oil, that if Iranian money is sitting in your banks, we are now willing to apply secondary sanctions, which is a very stern measure, and the Iranians should know that this is going to be the financial equivalent of what we saw in the kinetic activities.
Is this an example of expanding the war economically as opposed to militarily? Is this another phase of that?
Exactly.
Secretary, what was the coordination? Any updates on the insurance program, the U.S. reinsurance program for ships and tankers sailing through the Strait of Hormuz? Any update on that, sir?
Well, it's now up to $40 billion. It's run through the DFC, and we are waiting for the ships to be able to get some semblance of normality, and then they can come to